Hello students, welcome to my channel Biology Foundation. So in the past three videos we discussed in detail about unit 1, that is life on earth. So today let's start with the next unit of grade 6 biology, CBSE or ICSE, classification of living organisms. So this is part 1 of unit 2. So, if you remember, in Unit 1, we discussed why certain things are considered to be living and what makes the others to be called as non living things. And as I said, biology is the study of living organisms. So, we are more interested in studying about animate objects, unlike the inanimate. Sorry, we are more interested in studying about animate or living things than the inanimate or non living things. Okay, so before going into this unit, if you can see here a messy room, right? A room where all the things are thrown over, and it has to be cleaned. It needs a deep cleaning actually, right? So if someone asks you to find a key from this room, okay, there is your car key that's lost and it's in this room, you need to find. So obviously it takes a lot of time because the room is quite messy, things are thrown here and there. So you have to first clear out all the things, put them in their proper place, and then there is a chance that you can find the key. Now let's consider another scenario where your room is very neat, organized, uh, where the things that have to be put in that proper place are placed there. And now if someone asks you to give you a pen or a key, then easily you can find it and give it to the person, right? So on the planet Earth, we have millions of living organisms, starting from the minute microbes to the vast various kinds of plants, animals, right? Insects. So there are various kinds of living organisms. Now, to study these living organisms without proper organization of the living organisms, it's like finding a key in a messy room. It's quite difficult to find. First, organize all the things, then you can easily find the key. In the same way, when I say classification, what does classification mean? It means those organisms which share similarities are all kept in one group. So, classification is basically grouping organisms based on their similarities and dissimilarities. Okay, not all organisms share the same properties or same features, right? So, based on similarities and dissimilarities, we start grouping the organisms. This process is called classification, where those members which share particular features are kept in one group, and those that differ from those features are kept separately. Okay, that is called classification. So that's what means classification. Now, why do we need classification? If there is no proper classification, no proper organization of the living organisms, then then there is a chance that we can't study about living organisms properly. As we discussed in unit 1, biology is the study of living organisms. We want to study various kinds of living organisms, plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, viruses. Various types of living organisms have to be studied, and it's quite impossible to study each living organism in depth. Instead, if those organisms which share properties within themselves are kept in one group, then if we just study one organism, it's enough. I hope you're understanding. If there are, for example, five different organisms, okay, of which two organisms share properties with each other, and the remaining three share properties within each other among themselves. So they are kept in two groups. Group one, the two organisms, and group two, these three organisms are kept. Now, if you study any one organism in group one, it's enough. Why? Because if you study that one organism, we can know that the second organism also shares the same properties. In the same way, even in group two, instead of studying about all the three organisms, if you study just about one organism, the same features or properties are shared by the other two organisms, right? So classification makes our study easy and also systematic. Okay, where studying about living organisms is quite easy when classification is done. That means when proper grouping of organisms is done, then uh, there is systematic study, and the process of studying about living organisms becomes quite easy. So it's very important for classification to be done. Okay, so there are innumerable organisms on the planet Earth, starting from the minute bacteria to the gigantic animals and human beings. And for easy study, systematic study, and proper studying about in-depth study about living organisms, it's very important that classification must be done. What is classification? It's nothing but grouping of organisms based on their similarities and dissimilarities, right? So what are the advantages of classification? When you classify, then you can systematically study about that particular organism, and studying few organisms helps us to know much better about other organisms as well. Just now, as I described, for example, if there are five different organisms, and we found that two are sharing the similarities and the remaining three are sharing similarities among themselves, so we place them in two groups. You need not if they were not classified, you have to study independently each organism. But now that's not the case. From group 1, just study one organism. The other organism also shares the same properties. That's the reason both of them were placed in one group. In the same way, in group 2, any one organism can be studied, the remaining two share those properties. So it's just studying few organisms help us to know about the other organisms as well. And it's a systematic way of studying. That means it makes the process of studying easy. Okay. So now what is taxonomy? So taxonomy is a branch of biology. Okay. It's a branch in biology that basically deals with classification of living things. Okay. As I told you, there are n number of or innumerable living organisms on planet Earth. So classification of these living organisms on the planet Earth is dealt by one branch of biology that is called taxonomy. Okay. And those scientists who deal with taxonomy, or they're specialized in taxonomy, they are called taxonomists. They are the scientists who study taxonomy and see that the organisms are placed in specific groups. Okay. Now, firstly, initially, all the living organisms that are present on the planet Earth, for the first time, they were classified into two major groups, that is, plants and animals. How are they classified? Those organisms that can prepare their own food were all kept in plants. Okay. And those that cannot synthesize their food were placed in the group animals. And this classification of, or this process of classifying the living organisms into plants and animals was first done by Aristotle. Okay. And he is known as father of biology. Who is considered to be the father of biology, Aristotle, and he must be given the credit as he first classified all the living organisms that are present on the earth into plants and animals. Those that can prepare their own food as plants, and those that cannot as animals. And further, these animals, they are classified based on their habitat. Those animals that can live on land, those that live on water, and those that survive in air. Okay, so the credit for the first classification of living organisms into plants and animals goes to Aristotle. He's considered to be the father of biology. And taxonomists are the group of scientists who deal with taxonomy. And what is taxonomy? It's a branch of biology which deals with classification of living organisms. Okay, I'll talk about this later as we go through our classes. Okay. Next, systems of classification. Okay, living organisms are classified into two groups, that is, plants and animals. But there are other ways of classification. The first one is artificial system of classification. What is artificial system of classification? Here, organisms are classified based on their habit. Habit is nothing but the behavior that they show. They are classified based on their habitat. What is habitat? It's the place where an organism lives, an organism survives. Okay, for example, camel, for it habitat is its desert, or for cactus habitat is desert, for lotus plant habitat is pond or a water body, right? In that way, so habitat is the place where an organism survives or lives. Okay, so artificial system of classification is based on habit. Habit is basically the behavior, general behavior that an organism shows. Habitat is the place where the organism lives, and the type of reproduction that the organism actually shows. If you remember, in my last video we discussed about oviparous and viviparous organisms. Oviparous, that means these generally lay eggs, while viviparous organisms directly give birth to young ones, right? So, artificial system of classification, students try to understand that here organisms are classified based on mere observation. That means based on how they are looking, we are basically classifying the organisms into different groups. You will understand as I go through the next slides what is this artificial system of classification. But try to understand here we are classifying organisms based on the behavior they show. For example, if there are two different animals but they are showing same behavior, then there is a chance that both these animals can be kept in one group. Okay, we will talk about it. I'll talk with examples in the coming slides, but try to understand that artificial system of classification, it's based on habit, which is nothing but behavior of the organism or behavior of the plant. Habitat, that means the place where the organism or the plant survives, reproduction, and certain similarities, internal similarities. Now, in plants, let's understand how this artificial system of classification is done. Okay, we are talking about artificial system of classification in plants. Okay, based on size and form. Now, size of a plant is something which I can clearly see with my eye, right? Do I need any special equipment? No. I just by seeing the plant, I can know that is it a plant which is very huge or is it a plant just which is very small, right? So, based on observable characters, artificial system of classification is based on. Okay, so first thing is plants. All the plants were classified into three groups, that is herbs, shrubs, and trees, based on their size and form. Okay, now what are herbs? These are the plants which have very tender stem. Okay, where the stem is green stem, and herbs usually grow up to 1 meter height. Okay, these are the plants that usually grow to a height up to only not more than 1 meter, just around 1 meter. That's the height that they grow. And herbs, these plants, the lifespan is also very short. Okay, so what are herbs? Those plants, all those plants which grow to a height of 1 meter, whose lifespan is very short and which have green stem, they were all grouped together under one group and placed as herbs. Okay, examples include pea plant, mustard. Can you see the yellow flowers? Mustard and radish. Okay, they are herbs. And what are shrubs? Now, shrubs are basically bushy. Okay, that means they grow as bushes. They don't have one main stem. Now, if you see in a tree, you have a main stem which you call it as trunk. Okay, but shrubs never have such a kind of main stem. There are more branches that arise, and these shrubs mainly they grow as in a bushy way. Okay, and the stem is also woody. Okay, it's not green stem. The green stem later changes into a woody stem. Okay, and here shrubs, what is the height? They are medium sized usually. Okay, examples include your brinjal, jasmine, rose. They are all shrubs. Like any plant that you find, like maybe you can do a simple experiment, go to a garden and see how many of the plants are herbs, shrubs, and trees. How can I say which one is a herb, which is a shrub, and which is a tree? Try to understand. Shrubs are usually bushy and they are medium sized. Herbs are slightly less in height compared to herbs are slightly less in height compared to shrubs. The stem in herbs is greenish, while in shrubs it is woody. Okay, and coming to trees, trees are very tall. And how is the wood? Sorry, how is the stem? It is very wide and woody. If you see the stem in shrubs, it is very thin, whereas in tree, it is quite wide enough, right? So, examples of trees include banyan, mango, ashoka, eucalyptus, peepal, and number of trees, guava, right? Custard apple, many trees. So, basically, based on the size and form, all the plants were classified under artificial system of classification into three groups: herbs, shrubs, and trees. Any plant that you find growing as a bush, you can keep it under shrub. Plants that grow into a very tall height, having wide stem with woody bark, you place it under tree. A plant which is having tender stem and the height is very short, place it under herbs. So that is how plants were classified based on their size and form. Okay, now why am I considering this classification of plants as herbs, shrubs, and trees as artificial system? That's because it is based on mere observation of the plant. Just by observing the size of the plant, I'm grouping them as herbs, shrubs, and trees. Okay, next, based on lifespan. So the first one, plants were classified under artificial system as herbs, shrubs, and trees. Second one is based on their lifespan. Okay, they can be classified as annual, biennial, perennial. Maybe you might have, I don't know, now present, like present. Now you are having semester systems, but earlier students used to have annual examinations. What are annual examinations? It's an examination where you write the final exam only once in a year, right? Now you are writing two times because it's a semester system. But when you have annual examinations, is the system where you will be writing the final examinations where you study the entire syllabus and write the examination only once at the end of the year, right? So okay, we have plants classified as annual, biennial, and perennial. Okay, when I say annual plants, what are annual plants? These plants, they grow, they produce flowers, and later seeds are produced, and after that, once the seeds are formed, they die. This entire process occurs within 1 year. Okay, they are called annual plants, where they complete their life cycle within a year. They grow, develop flowers, seeds are produced, seeds are harvested, and then the plant dies within a year. The life cycle is complete. Annual plants. Example: rice, wheat. Best examples of annual plants. What are biennial plants? As the name suggests, by 2 years. They complete their life cycle in 2 years. In the first year, what these plants do is they grow and store the food. Okay. In the second year, they grow, produce flowers, and then die in the second year. Utilize the food for the production of the flowers, and then they die. Examples include turnip. Sorry, I'm writing turnip and carrot. Biennial, that means the lifespan or the life cycle ends after 2 years, where in the first year they grow and store food, and in the second year you can see that the plant grows, flowers are produced, and later dies. Okay, perennial, where the life cycle of this plant is more than 2 years. Okay, in these organisms, sorry, in these plants, the plant grows, it produces flower, it produces seeds, it won't die. Again, the plant grows, produces flowers, seeds are produced, and the process continues. Is it clear? So, here the plants can survive up to a number of years, around 200 years, 300 years. It varies from species to species. Example: neem, people, banyan. Okay. So basically, based on the lifespan of the plant, plants can be classified into annual, which complete their life cycle within a year; biennial, complete their life cycle in 2 years. In the first year, storage of food takes place, and in the second year, flowers are produced and the seeds are set, and finally the plant dies. Perennial, more than 2 years, and till their death. the process of production of fruits, seeds is continued. Okay, this is based on lifespan. Thirdly, plants can be classified again based on mode of nutrition. If you remember in Unit 1, I discussed about what actually is nutrition. It is the process where plants synthesize their food. This food is converted into energy, and this energy is utilized for various activities that the plants has to perform, right? So, based on the mode of nutrition, plants are classified into autotrophs. Plants are basically autotrophs. We know that plants are autotrophs, but not all plants are autotrophs. Most of the plants are autotrophs, or I can say green plants. All green plants are autotrophic because of the presence of chlorophyll pigment in them. Okay, because of chlorophyll pigment present in these plants, the chlorophyll can capture the solar energy, and with the help of carbon dioxide and water, food is generated. Okay, but certain plants, if you remember, even in unit 1 I gave these examples of cuscuta and rafflesia. Okay, these two plants cannot prepare their own food. Okay, so heterotrophic plants can be classified into two types: saprophytes and parasites. Okay, what are parasites? These are the organisms which depend on other plants for their food. If you see cuscuta, can you see this yellow color plant? This plant is cuscuta, and can you see the green color plant? This cuscuta is depending on the green color plant for its food. Okay, so it's acting like a parasite. Cuscuta is acting like a parasite, and this green plant is acting like a host. Okay, rafflesia is also a parasite which depends on other plants. And what are saprophytes? Saprophytes are the plants which feed on dead and decaying matter. What does this mean? Now, we all know that on this planet Earth there are n number, innumerable living organisms. Do you think that all these living organisms always are um, they're always living? I mean, do they survive throughout? No, they die, right? With time, living organisms or plants, they die. Now, once when a plant dies, what happens? The plants just fall in the soil. Or even when animals die, or when humans die, we bury their bodies, yes or no? Now, who will feed on these dead bodies? Do you think that the dead body remains as it is even after millions of years? No, it gets completely decomposed. Who is doing the decomposition process? Saprophytes. These saprophytes are the plants which feed on the dead and decaying matter. Now, for example, if a person died, we usually bury the body of the person in the soil, depending upon the ritualistic ceremonies. Okay, if we bury the body of the person in the soil, what happens? If you see after 20 or 30 years, you can find only the bones, but not the flesh. Why is it so? That's because certain organisms present in the soil, they feed on the dead and decaying matter. So saprophytes are the organisms, they cannot prepare their own food because of lack of chlorophyll. So they feed on dead and decaying matter. Examples of saprophytes are fungi, basically are saprophytes. Like your, can you see here slice of bread and there is mold present? Okay, rhizopus. These are saprophytes. So, based on mode of nutrition, plants can be classified into autotrophs. Green plants, all green plants are kept under autotrophs, and those plants which depend on other plants, they are said to be heterotrophs. But in heterotrophs also, they are placed under parasites, while those plants that feed on dead and decaying matter, they are kept under saprophytes. Okay. Now, fourth way, we are discussing about artificial system of classification, and under artificial system of classification, plants can be classified based on their size. They can be classified based on the nutrition. They can be classified based on lifespan. And now the fourth one is based on the habitat. Okay, if you remember, just uh, before before 10 minutes in one of the slide I said what is habitat. It is the place where the plant or the organism survives. Okay, So, based on the habitat, based on the place where the plant is found, plants can be classified into hydrophytes, mesophytes, and xerophytes. Phyta means what? Plants. Okay. Zero means what? Dry. Zero refers to dry. Meso refers to moderate. Okay. Hydro refers to water. First, let's understand about hydrophytes. As the name suggests, hydrophytes, these are the plants which survive in water. Now, hydrophytes, they grow in water. Okay, these are the plants that grow in water, unlike the normal plants which you find in land. Now, these hydrophytes are of three types. They can be free floating hydrophytes, or they can be rooted hydrophytes, or they can be submerged hydrophytes. What does it mean? Let's understand. For example, this is your water body. Okay, water is present. Let's consider this is your pond or lake or something. When I say free floating hydrophytes, these are the plants which float on the water body. Okay, they are not submerged, but they float on the water body. Example is Pistia. Can you see this? Okay, just a minute. Sorry. So we are talking about free floating hydrophytes. Free floating hydrophytes are those hydrophytes which float on the water body. Example is Pistia. Okay. And then we have rooted hydrophytes. What are rooted hydrophytes? You have the water body. These float on the water. They float on the water, but they have roots inside. Okay. That are present. Like it's attached and it floats on the water body. Best example is lotus, or even water lily is also another example that comes under rooted hydrophyte, where the flowers float on the water surface and but still the plant is rooted inside. Okay. Next, the third one is submerged hydrophytes. What are submerged hydrophytes? For example, if this is the water body, the plant lives inside. It's completely submerged in water, no floating. Example is hydrilla. This is hydrilla. Okay, it's completely submerged. It's completely in water. Okay, whatever you see, this is all water. It's inside water. Unlike your pistia and lotus, which float on the surface, hydrilla is a submerged hydrophyte. So, what are hydrophytes? These are the plants which live in water, and and all the plants which live in water, they are kept under a group known as hydrophytes. Now, within hydrophytes, there are free floating hydrophytes. Example is pistia. Icornia is also another example. And there are certain plants which are rooted. They float on the water body, but still they are rooted inside in the soil. Example, lotus and water lily. And few plants are completely submerged. Example is hydrilla and even vallisneria is one more example. I didn't attach or upload the picture of it, but vallisneria is another example of submerged hydrophyte. Okay, so this is how hydrophytes are, plants which grow in water, and they can be of three types: free floating, submerged, and rooted. Okay, next is xerophytes. As the name suggests, xerophytes, these are zero means dry. These plants grow in dry conditions, arid conditions, somewhat in desert. Okay, and in these plants, the leaves are quite reduced. That means they don't have broad leaves. No, that's not the case. The leaves are quite reduced into thin structures, or they're reduced into spines. Can you see the structures? Okay, these are your leaves. Okay, where the leaves are reduced into spines or into thin structures to prevent water loss. Examples of these xerophytes are cactus. Okay, and this is calotropis. Okay, milkweed plant, that's the common name of calotropis. And opuntia, cactus, all cactus or opuntia you can say. All these are basically xerophytes. That means they grow in dry conditions. Common name of calotropis is milkweed plant because it gives the milky like substance when you tear the leaf of this plant. Okay, so these are xerophytes. That means they grow under dry conditions. They require very less amount of water for their survival. What are mesophytes? Meso refers to moderate. That means these are the plants that require moderate conditions of climate, moderate temperature, moderate amount of water for their survival. What are the examples? Gulmohar, or you can take banyan, peepal, Derris indica, any plant, any tree that you find normally in your locality, those trees are mesophytes because they grow under moderate temperature. But any plant that you find in water, they are considered to be hydrophytes. While those plants that are found in dry conditions, they are said to be xerophytes. Xeric, zero means dry conditions, hydro, water conditions. Okay, and meso, moderate. They survive under moderate climatic conditions. So, based on habitat, plants are classified as hydrophytes, mesophytes, and xerophytes. Okay, this is the fourth thing. Next, if you remember, we discussed about perennials. What are perennials? These are the plants where the life cycle is greater than 2 years. It depends. Where the plant can survive for 10 years, or it can survive for 100 years, or it can survive for 200 years, or maybe 2000 years, like the redwood tree of California, right? So they complete their life cycle in more than 2 years. Now, these perennial plants can be deciduous or they can be evergreen. When I say deciduous, what does it mean and what do I mean by saying evergreen plants? Right? Deciduous plants are those that shed their leaves only once in a year. In a year, they shed their leaves only once, and once they shed their leaves completely, the tree is without leaves. It becomes a leafless tree because all the leaves are shed at a time, and once in a year, it is shed. What do you mean by evergreen trees? These are the trees which shed their leaves throughout the year. Throughout the year. And not all leaves are shed at a time in evergreen. In case of deciduous, it's the case where the leaves are shed, all the leaves are shed at a time once in a year. Okay, only once they are shed and at a time. But in evergreen, as the name suggests, the plant is always evergreen. That means leaves are present on the trees and shedding also continues throughout the year. There is no specific period or season when all the leaves get shed. That's not the case. Shedding is nothing but the leaf falling, okay, falling of leaves from the tree. So deciduous plants are those trees or plants where the shedding of leaves occurs only once in a year. Example includes mulberry tree, and here you have picture of oak tree. This is oak tree, and this is the picture of teak wood. Okay, in these plants, you find the shedding of leaves once in a year. All the leaves are shed at a time in deciduous plants. Evergreen, okay, here the leaves are shed throughout the year, and not all leaves are shed at a time. Okay, and examples include here you have jackfruit, okay, conifers. We will talk about conifers as we discuss in the later classes, okay? Or gymnosperms. Both are examples of conifers or gymnosperms. We will discuss about it, but try to understand evergreen trees means your mango, neem. They also come under evergreen trees, okay? So I hope you understood what is artificial system of classification. So basically today I have just given a brief introduction of classification, and we discussed one type of classification which is artificial system of classification. So let me just summarize before I wind up for today's video, before I wind up today. So basically what is classification? It is grouping organisms, living organisms, based on similarities. And why do we need classification? For proper studying of living organism. And by classification, when organisms are classified into different groups, then just studying one organism from that member is enough to understand about different members. That means, for example, in hydrophytes, if you remember, we have rooted hydrophytes, we have free floating hydrophytes, and we have submerged hydrophytes. Rooted hydrophytes examples are lotus, water lily, right? And free floating hydrophytes example Pistia, Icornia. I did not include its picture. Submerged hydrophytes Hydrilla and Vallisneria. That is what we have learned earlier, right? Now, we know that in rooted hydrophytes you have lotus and water lily. If you study about lotus in detail, you will get to know that, okay, similar properties are shared even by water lily. You need not again study in detail about water lily because both lotus and water lily come under rooted hydrophytes. In the same way, if you study about pistia, most of the properties of Pistia will be shared by Icornia because both of them belong to free floating hydrophytes. That is what I'm meaning to say when I say that classification basically helps us study few organisms. When we study few organisms, it helps us to know about other organisms as well. If you just study about lotus, you'll get to know about water lily because both of them share properties. If you study about Pistia, okay, then those characteristics that you studied in Pistia are also shared by Icornia. The same way Hydrilla, Vallisneria. Is it clear? And taxonomy is the branch of biology that deals with studying of classification of living organisms. And those scientists who deal with taxonomy, they are called as taxonomists. And for the first time, living organisms are classified into plants and animals by Aristotle, who is considered to be the father of biology. This I'll discuss it in the next class, okay? Because it is a part of another system of classification. Now, systems of classification of two types: artificial system and natural system. Natural system is what I'll talk in the next class. Today, I have discussed about artificial system of classification. In this system of classification, basically, we classify organisms based on their habitat, based on the behavior that they show, the type of reproduction, and observable characteristics. Okay, so based on size and form, plants can be classified into herbs, shrubs, and trees. Based on their lifespan, they're classified as annuals, biennials, and perennials. Annuals are those plants which complete their life cycle in a year. Biennials, as the name suggests, by two, complete their life cycle in 2 years. Perennials, more than 2 years. Based on mode of nutrition, all green plants are autotrophs, and those plants which cannot prepare their own food are heterotrophs. In heterotrophs, also, they can be classified into two subheadings, that is, saprophytes and parasites. Parasites depend on other plants for their food. Saprophytes, they feed on dead and decaying matter. Based on the habitat, place they live, they are classified into hydrophytes, mesophytes, and xerophytes. Perennials can be internally classified again into deciduous and evergreen. Deciduous are the plants where the shedding of leaves occurs at a time in uh, in the tree once a year, where all the leaves of the tree are shed at a time. In deciduous plant, evergreen plant, as the name suggests, the plant always looks green because the leaves always stay. Because not all the leaves get shed at a time, but continuous shedding occurs throughout the year. Best example for evergreen plants is jackfruit, mango, people, banyan, and for deciduous, mulberry, oak, teak wood, etc. Okay, so in today's class, I have just introduced you to the term classification, why we need classification, what is the importance of classification, and who was given the credit for the first classification of living organisms into plants and animals, and what is the first system of classification, where we studied about artificial system of classification using the examples of plants. Because living organisms includes both animals and plants, we have discussed in detail how plants were classified under artificial system of classification based on their observable traits. That means something, those traits which you can see through the naked eye. Based on that, we have seen how plants can be classified based on the size, based on their nutrition, based on their lifespan, based on their habitat. Okay, so if you have any doubts related to this topic, please feel free to comment it down below. And if you have any doubts related to Unit 1, kindly watch all the three parts of Unit 1 and comment down your doubts in that particular videos. And please, if you like my content, do share it with your friends like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Biology Foundation, and enjoy the process of learning. Bye bye. Have a good day.